guys, so this is part one of 2 parts of the Q&A after the screening of Riot Girls. For those of you who don't know, Riot Girls is the new independent film from Canadian filmmaker Jovanka Vuckovic. I am probably mispronouncing that name, and for that I am incredibly sorry. Pay attention to the opening, at which point Dr. Rebekah McKendry pronounces it much better than I ever could. Also note, this actual interview is being conducted by Rebekah McKendry, who's also a wonderful, talented woman in the film scene here in Los Angeles, California. Her last film, All the Creatures Were Stirring, was just released not too long ago, so definitely check that out as well. If you guys are not familiar with Jovanka's work, I don't know her very well personally. She is dear friends with some of my dear friends, and I really adore her online personality, and I've just followed her work for many years because she's such a strong vocal woman in film, and I really love and respect that. She started out actually on the visual effects side, and then became an editor at Rue Morgue magazine, which is a Canadian horror publication, which I'm obviously a huge fan of. I'm sure you are as well. And then from there, she got into writing and directing, starting with her first short film, The Captured Bird, which I believe was produced by Guillermo del Toro. So this woman knows her horror, and she knows how to make a really great, compelling story with really original characters and unique arcs. And I think that that's the strength of Riot Girls. And also one of the reasons why I love it, and one of the reasons why I'm going to highly recommend that you check it out, because it's just so different than everything else that is being made. The characters, the context, the story, unique, original, fresh. Go see it. I think you'll really like it. And now here's part one of the interview.
And let's bring up the director, Jovanka Vuckovic.
It's very green.
The whole stage.
It's green.
Yes.
Hi.
So,
Hello.
this was amazing. So much energy and spirit, enthusiasm behind it. Can you start by telling us, how did you first become involved in the project?
You know, Katherine and Lauren went to film school together in Canada, and I guess Katherine had written this script, and it was like 10 years old at the time, and I think they were like, they were trying to get it made, or Katherine was trying to get it made, and it kept, you know, going to like male producers who like really didn't understand it, and kept trying to make it like the Hunger Games, and like cast it with like really good looking people, and like shoehorn in all these like, you know, steamy lesbian sex scenes and stuff, and which is totally not the movie that they wanted, right? So then when it came across, when they sent it to me, I was like, oh, I know what this is, you know, this is like a fun kind of like culty kids adventure movie, like, you know, like the ones that we grew up watching during the 80s. And
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about that? Because that's what I felt, is it's a kids adventure movie, but at the same time it has this incredibly adult Lord of the Flies-ish quality to it with some crazy violence. How did you traverse the two areas?
well, I just said I didn't want to do it unless I could make it violent. It's like, you know, I come from a horror background, and I when they approached me, I was like, are you sure you want me to do this movie? Like, because it's not going to be totally safe if you hire me, right? And they were okay with it being R-rated, and they were okay with, like, I mean, if it was totally up to me, I would have like killed somebody every 10 minutes in the movie. But you know, it just, we all agreed that that's the kind of movie that we wanted to make, right? So.
And on that note, could you talk a little bit about the effects? They looked mostly practical, including like the major head wound and things like that.
Yeah. I wanted to do everything practical with visual effects enhancements. Mm-hmm. So that head, we had one take of.
Folks frightening when you have to do
it. Had one take and no resets, so if it didn't work, we would have been in big trouble. And of course, you know, the sun, we were racing against the sun was setting, it was 6 p.m. and I still didn't have the head on set, and you know, so we ended up pulling it off. So, and then you know, I really like pushed hard. I sent that shot back like 40 times because I wanted it to be gross and the eyeball and everything.
That's what made it for me.
Everybody loves the little details, right?
Talk a little bit about where you guys shot it in the actual shoot itself, because it literally looks like you took over a whole town.
Yeah, we did. We took over the town of Parry Sound, Ontario. So this little town in northern Ontario. They gave us Main Street, and we shut down Main Street, put a crane on there and stuff, and they were very warm and very welcoming.
Now the art, there was graffiti. It was all very anti-authoritarian. But were you able to transform over everything on Main Street art-wise?
Some stuff, we Greeked, and then other stuff was actually visual effects, painted on and tracked into the shot.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I have a visual effects background, so I'm horrible to work with in that way, because I will send stuff back over and over and over again until it's just right. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about casting. I think this is probably the fourth film I've seen Madison in this year. But Scratch, where did you find some of the rest of the cast?
They all auditioned. Yeah, they all, Scratch was one of the first people Paloma was one of the first people I saw after Scratch, and I really liked her, and we had her come back for a callback, and she tucked her hair up into a baseball cap and put it on. She had this great androgynous kind of look to her. I always, my read on Scratch was always that she was non-binary, and so when I met with her, she said the exact same thing to me. So we were like, that's perfect, and she just was perfect for it. And then Madison, had just did an amazing audition. And now she's been in Annabelle.
Yeah, she was in Annabelle.
And all these movies, and so they got to come up to Perry Sound and spend a few weeks just hanging out together and stuff, and so they got really close, and they were in Canada you can drink when you're 19, and so they had just turned 19, so they, so they went out they were like, this is great, I get to have they get to buy alcohol, and so they really bonded, and I think that helped for their chemistry.
And really they seem to kind of just evoke the punk aesthetic, even in just body language and things like that, and the costuming and everything. It was just so wonderfully infused throughout the entire film, including the soundtrack. Could you talk a little bit about selecting your songs? That soundtrack is just amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's all just stuff I was listening to when I was their age, right? So I was, a teenager in the 90s, so...
Early Donna's in there.
Yeah, right. So it's all stuff that I was listening to at the time, and I was trying really hard to get a Minor Threat song too, and I came really close. I got to have some conversations on the phone with Ian McKay, which was pretty cool for me. Pretty cool, yeah. So, but it didn't end up working out. But yeah. So Girls' School and. Joan Jett, and Joan Jett was pretty cool to be able to get that song for such a small, scrappy little movie.
I smiled at the L7 pin.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, it opens with an L7 song, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
Could you talk a little bit about the comic book aesthetic that you put over everything and how it kind of became your transitions? It really was infused through the entire thing. How did you pick the art and kind of decide where and when to put it?
I always, when I first read the script, I always thought this feels like it came from an indie comic from the 90s, like Tank Girl or something like that, right? And it was just an idea I had in my head, and then when we were cutting the film together, it just felt like it just needed it. And it was, it took some convincing because, when you're sitting with an editor and you're like, okay, so I want to do a wipe here, and she's like, a white? White? And she's like, no, right? I promise it's going to be good. I promise. Just trust me, right? So it was just the easiest way to kind of tell all of that expository shit without having to have the character say it. Because nobody cares about that scene where they say, remember when all of our parents died? That sucked. And, so... So we just I just put it in there, and we hired a comic book artist who makes these really cool indie and feminist comics and stuff to do the illustrations. So it just kind of worked. It helped it all gel together because the movie, is important that it doesn't take itself too seriously because it's kind of ridiculous, right? The whole conceit, is totally ridiculous. So I felt like. If I did the Walter Hill thing from Warriors, if people would know from the very beginning to not take the movies seriously and to just have fun, right? And then that's why nobody really gets too upset when we kill an 8-year-old kid.
I still had a punch to it, but you move on a little bit.
Poor fish.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about your major kind of filmic influences for it? Like, what were you watching at the time? I saw a nice Potter's Bluff reference, so well done there. But like, what else was kind of really influencing you?
So mostly movies like Warriors and Class of 1984, Night of the Comets. I made the cast and the crew all watch Suburbia and Over the Edge and those kinds of like youth and revolt movies, cult films, right? Because my hope was that someday that this would be a cult film, right? Because I knew it's not going to win me an Oscar. The thing we were trying to make is like a cult film, so like a B movie. So yeah.
Let's take a couple questions from the audience here. In the back, yeah.
How do you like have a conversation with an 8-year-old like, oh, your throat is gonna get slit? Like, what is the conversation you have with these kids when they're like dying?
He came in and auditioned. He had to audition that scene, so he had to come in and do that over and over again. Kids are very. They take their jobs very seriously, and they respect the craft of acting, and the best way to deal with them is to treat them the same way you would any of the adults. So you just explain the scene, and they just think it's so fun, right? I mean, we had a child psychologist on set, and all this stuff we're supposed to do to be responsible, but the kids just love the violent stuff. They were fine. They didn't need to talk to anybody.
Yeah, right here.
What
Yes.
about the other kid, the one who provided them with the vehicle?
Oh yeah.
He was pretty cool.
Oh, Bacon!
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
It was
Bacon.
such a good scene.
Bacon
There's
is
so
one of
much
my
character
favorite-
packed in there.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. Yeah, he's so great. Yeah, what's up, Scratch? What can I do for you? He just came in and he auditioned. And he looked like he looked like that. And he was like this little Italian gangster. With like ears pierced, and I was just like, he's perfect. I think everybody wants like a Bacon sequel.
Spit off.
Yeah, Scratch gives the poor guy the purple nurple, the titty twister, or
Which
whatever
was-
it's called.
It's great because that was such a child way to enforce torture.
It is.
And there was a lot of that throughout where it was kind of like how an adolescent would perceive kind of, going after torture or creating power. It was a nice move.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I made them do that, and I had to ask his mom. Because I could say, is it okay if she grabs him by the nipple and twists it? Right? It's going to be fake. She's not really going to touch his nipple, but she's going to pretend. Is that okay? His mom was like, yeah, no problem. Oh, thank you.
Do you think there's going to be a sequel?
We never conceived, of a sequel for this. I mean, I think that we're all surprised it actually got made because in the very beginning, we got a lot of because it was written by a woman and produced by a woman, directed by a woman, and the two leads were queer. We got a lot of who is this movie for? And we were just didn't understand that people who didn't get it, right? And there were people that kind of wanted to ghettoize it as it's a queer film, and we're like, yes, but the world needs more of these kinds of movies where we just their queerness is ubiquitous, and we don't need any explanations for who these people are. So, right? And it was such an uphill battle, and primarily because a lot of people who were making these comments were just cisgender straight white guys, and they were just I don't understand, and so we thought it's a miracle that the movie got financed at all, so we haven't even thought about a sequel. I'm glad that people are asking. If I did one, I would love to see just a whole movie of just Nat and Scratch, because we see, the screenwriter really wanted to have this equally balanced gang movie where we saw the same amount of both sides, but I really fell in love with those two characters, and I just would love to see more of them and their journey.
Yeah, I want a Nat and Scratch Road movie.
Yeah.
With
yeah.
bacon.
Just more of them in the car, and, you know.
With bacon.
With bacon.
With bacon. And nobody cares about sewing it.
Like the Joe
Since
Pesci.
you mentioned the two equally balanced game, you had such strong aesthetical choices for both of them, how the east side and the west side look so dramatically different aesthetically. Could you talk a little bit about, kind of how you prepared those, even just the color palettes were remarkably different between the two?
Well, yeah, it's just like it's a class struggle, right? The poor kids on the east side of the bridge, and the rich kids on the west, and so even before the apocalypse, the east side would have been more of a blue collar area, and where Nat and Scratch were from, and so it was easy, to just do their stuff in exteriors and try to, because we had $3.5 million, which is not a lot of money. So, we didn't have a lot of money to do it as an urban apocalypse or something like that, and that's part of the reason why we chose a small town to do it in. And so it was, everything on the west side was orderly and authoritarian and clean and all Titan colors. Everything is yellow and blue, and then the east side was just more chaotic. Yeah. It was just sort of an easy choice to make.
Other questions? Yeah, right here.
So how did you finally get financing for a queer,
I know.
female-led, female-made, cult film?
Primarily from the Canadian government.
Woo!
Go Canada, yeah. So a lot of the money came from, we have a really extensive grant system in Canada. Some came from, there was some US gap financing and stuff like that, but a lot of the money was put together by the producer, Lauren Grant, through using, applying for telefilm. And what's great about telefilm is they're like they're the national film body, and they finance a lot of small independent films. But in my case, I was part of the national program, which means they gave me more money historically than they've ever given any other woman to make a movie outside. Yeah.
Congratulations.
I know. Which was really, really cool. And I think that, they were trying to make a difference. And they're talking about gender parity and all this stuff, and, and trying to give more money. And here we are with this project, written by a woman, directed by a woman, produced by a woman, starring two queer characters. They could see that what we were trying to do in terms of representation and making movies that make a difference.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they stood behind us, which was great. Yeah.
Any other audience questions? Okay, so where can we find this and see this? Any others?
No, any other questions? No, there's
Oh,
a
wait,
few brave
there's a
people.
few.
There we go, yeah, yes.
How about Jessica? Oh, sorry, right there.
What's
Hi.
the
Yeah, so
Yes.
I love the whole Karate Kid vibe.
Sweet
I
delay.
mean, I was
my gosh.
cracking up. I didn't know I was going to be laughing. It was amazing.
Yeah, I know. Todd is just such an asshole.
Oh, he's so good.
The
Yeah.
lack of sleeves
So good.
for me.
Yeah, no, he came in, the kids were great. So Paloma came in, I said, can I shave your head into a mohawk? And she's like, sure. And that kid, he had long hair, and I was like, for you, it's going to be a mullet and frosted tips. And he was like, okay, yeah, he was totally down for it. And sorry, what was the question?
Coming up with this, the music, I mean, the whole thing when you're developing, that part of these characters, that kind of gang where it was kind of 80s, Karate Kid vibes, I love. Was that
Thank
something you thought about or even intended?
Well, on the none of that stuff was on the page. So when I pitched my version of this movie to them, it was I want to do it, but set it in the 90s and have populated with all this kind of music that I grew up listening to, and I had sort of an idea for how the girls should look and everything. And so I brought all that kind of style stuff to it. But then, yeah, you know, the Todd and being the Karate Kid reference and stuff, that's all Katherine, that's all the screenwriter, you know, she was kind of like, you know, just nodding to those kinds of movies and those kinds of goofy fun characters. So a lot of the humor in it was her, because I'm a horror person. I'm not that funny, you know. Right?
Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to tune in for part 2 of the interview with Jovanka Vuckovic. That is going to be coming up in a couple days over here. And also, most importantly, check out her film. Riot Girls is now available on all VOD platforms as well as theatrically in limited release. So definitely look for it there. And don't forget to follow and support her and the film on social media. I will put some links in the description box below. And 10 billion bonus points if you hit the like button down below and subscribe to the YouTube channel for Scream Queen Stream. We produce independent horror content all the time. We also have a Patreon that goes to support the show, so if you feel like giving a couple bucks a month to that, that would be greatly appreciated. I will link down in the description box below. You get early access to the episodes, you get signed swags, Google Hangouts, and more, so check that out. Thanks!